All right. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. It's good to see you all. 150 Psalms in the book of Psalms. Every Psalm really was created with different intention. And what the commentaries try to do is really dig into that intention of King David, the author of the book, to see exactly what each Psalm is directed for. So the Psalm for speech apparently is Psalm 45. And that's the Psalm we've been saying again because really that, as mentioned, is the area that was affected in Rabbi Steinsaltz's health, and we hope that this psalm will bring healing to his speech, and of course in general to his entire being. All right, so Psalm 45 in Hebrew first. Okay, so back to chapter of Torah that we've been now studying for the past few classes. Who wants to refresh my memory? 50, oh thank you, okay, 70 in these books here, and 93, thank you, in this edition. 93 in the orange books. Okay, big idea that we were speaking about was really this paradox. On the one hand, this world is the most materialistic of worlds, very physical and has its own limitations and measurements. On the other hand, it's also the most spiritual of worlds, even though it's materialistic. Why? Because really what we can do with the matter of this world, of course, by God's commandments and by fulfilling the mitzvot that deal with this materialistic world in this world, right, is achieve God himself, or achieve a level of holiness that no other world can achieve. Not the angels can achieve, not even the souls can achieve. Why? Because God's whole purpose was to create this world and then to dwell in this world. How does he dwell in this world? By really transforming this materialistic aspect of this world into a spiritual world. And when we do that, when we take, just to give an example, when we take a penny, just a penny, which is very materialistic, and we give it to tzedakah, we've transformed this penny into the holiest thing in the world, a holiness that doesn't even exist in the upper world. That's how holy it is. We've transformed it into a channel of God himself. And therefore, even though it is a very physical, materialistic world, which is seemingly disconnected from God, we have the power to connect this world, that again is so materialistic, to God himself by transforming materialism into spiritualism, or what seems so physical into that which is so spiritual, and by doing mitzvot really with this world. So that's where in a way, to put it maybe poetically, where heaven and earth kiss, that's where God resides. God doesn't reside just in heaven, and that's why is not fully present in the upper world as in this world, because he wants to reside specifically in the matter of this world, in this earth, in this physical earth. And when we can merge these two, heaven and earth, together, then we can create a divine presence that really cannot exist anywhere else. So that was the big idea. Let's continue. So we're at the bottom of page 70, right? Which is, does everyone have it? Which is why it may be said. Does anyone want to read this? Right. So emotions, thoughts, feelings are fleeting. One day you feel full of love, the other day you don't. And one day you feel very spiritually awakened, the other day you don't. Emotions are fleeting, but when we have the power to, again, draw down God's light into this physical world, we create an existence that stays forever. That's why, by the way, they say that goodness really stays forever. Goodness is the only eternal thing in this world. Divinity is the only eternal thing in this world. That's why goodness is eternal, because goodness is divine. Evil is finite. Evil goes away. When evil comes down to this world, if goodness is faced with it, it can be overcome by this goodness. So, in a way, when we draw down this divine presence in this world, we really are creating an everlasting impact on this world that will stay forever. Something that, again, doesn't exist in the realm of the emotions, on the realm of thoughts. To bring this down maybe to a more simple idea. So I was just in Israel, and I had the privilege of being with Rabbi Steinsaltz. Where he was, there was another rabbi who was coming to see him, Rabbi Allouche. I don't know if some of you may have heard of him. He's one of the chief rabbis of Jerusalem. So as he came out, Rabbi Steinsaltz says, he was saying that this room is lucky. Why? Because even the walls here, even the tables are holy. Because it's in the, not just because in the presence of Rabbi Steinsaltz, but because Rabbi Steinsaltz used this room in order to study Torah, in order to do mitzvot, thereby transforming this room into something very holy. Something that, again, cannot happen in the realm of emotions, in the realm of feelings. Each time we do a mitzvah in this physical world, it transforms this world, whether we see it or not. But it does draw down this divine presence. And at this table, therefore, not studying on it, this table is also holy. And this holiness is permanent. It stays here forever. And I think you feel it, when you walk into homes. We've said this before, but it's a home where holiness happens. The home, even though it's just a structure of sticks and stones, the home feels different. Why? Because there's holiness that has been drawn down really forever. And conversely, a home that's not like that, you also feel it. You feel the structure of it could be a beautiful mansion, it doesn't matter. It could be just a physical home. And really, that's the purpose of doing mitzvot in this world, like he says so beautifully. I will say this, that it's interesting because the word mitzvah is also often translated into the word commandment, but that's really not the real translation of mitzvah. Mitzvah comes from the word tzevet in Hebrew, which means to partner. Commandment is pkudah, right? You can have tzivui, but mitzvah really is referring to the word partnership. And why? There's two takes on this, two different takes. Rabbi Akiva says because it partners, a mitzvah partners God with man. We become partners in bearing this world. But there's a Kabbalistic Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who's the author of the Zohar. He gives another twist to it. He says, no, it doesn't partner man with God, it partners this world, this physical world with God. Man is just a matchmaker. And we really are bringing this spirituality into this physical realm. That's the tzavta that's happening. That's the partnership here. But I would say, of course, that both are right. You are connecting with God, you're partnering with God, and at the same time, this world is partnering with God and creating this divine presence that, again, is eternal. That's the word mitzvah. This idea of God and man partnering, or God and this world partnering. Other religions, I could name a few on the top of my head, see really this world as an enemy. And therefore you have, look, it's no secret that priests don't marry, Catholic priests don't marry, and they try to divorce themselves from this world because they see that any physical action as a disturbance to your spirituality. But Buddhism is the same thing. You almost have to isolate yourselves. Judaism is unique in the sense that it says that in order to really experience God, you won't find him on the mountaintops of Tibet, but rather you'll find him in that penny given to tzedakah. So you have different relationships with God based on which religion you come from, but Judaism really partners with God. And that's why I think we also have the ability to complain, to shout at God, to protest. When we feel that evil is happening in this world, and that's part of prayer. We say to God, it's wrong. I'm sorry. We're supposed to be in this together. You're not doing your part of the deal. I'm trying to do my part of the deal.
Yeah,
but you're not doing your part of the deal.
The legend of Job.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Book of Job is all about that. Exactly. Right. But in Judaism, it's a duty because you do see yourself as a partner. You are a partner in God's creation. And, if you're not doing your side of the job, I don't know how much you can complain because maybe you should first take care of your side of the partnership. But then if you do, then you have all the right. And in a way, I think that's why, in a deeper sense, Talmud says that the righteous have that power. It says, Tzaddik gozer v'kadosh baruch hu mekayem. Whatever a righteous person decrees, God fulfills. And in a way, I think that's because the righteous person does his side of the deal completely. Right? He dots every I and crosses every T. He's completely devoted to that mission, to fulfilling his partnership, his side of the partnership. And therefore, when he comes to God and says, I'm sorry, you're not doing your job here, God says, you know what, you're such a loyal partner, I'll do my side of the deal also, even if it may be right or wrong, but we're in this together, so I'll listen to you. Right, that's right. Eventually God intervened, even though Abraham was much less of a protester than Job. Right. Moses also, right? Moses stands at the top of the mountain and says, no, you can't erase this nation. I'm protesting against this. Forgive the people of Israel for sinning the sin of the golden calf. But Abraham does that also at the gates of Sodom. He says to God, I'm sorry, you can't just burn the city. The figures, the biblical figures, the people we look up to, from Abraham to Job, from even Devorah, Queen Esther. They people who protested, who didn't hesitate to protest. But again, I think they also had the right to, because their side of the partnership was completely fulfilled. And the Hasidic masters speak a lot about this. That's where the line has to be drawn. Where exactly does it have to be drawn? So if bad happens to you, you shouldn't protest. The Talmud says that if something negative happens to a person, one should search within himself. He should engage in introspection. Maybe there's something that's God's sign or God's calling to the person that maybe he needs to change something in his life. And the Talmud even continues to say, Pishpesh velo matzah. If you searched within yourself and you don't find anything, this is suffering of love. It's God telling you, hey, I'm just playing around with you. You know how I was watching it here on 68th Street. They have beautiful horses. And I go by sometimes and with my kids walking back from Shabbat. When horses play, they hurt themselves a lot. But that's how they play. They like bite each other's necks, and it was a beautiful sight to see the other day. But they were playing. But in a way, that's how God plays with us, like a horse. He hurts us sometimes, but he says, "I'm just playing. It's my suffering of love." But one second. But if you find suffering befalling someone else, that's when you have to protest. You know yourself. You can always find something that needs rectification. But others, who are you to judge? And therefore, that's when you have to stand and say, "I'm sorry." Right. But we never know how God measures rewards and punishments.
Right.
And it's not our domain. That's God's domain.
Right.
And therefore, we shouldn't even try to come to say that therefore that you were saying. If we see evil happening, whether it's to a person that we perceive as good or a person that we perceive as bad, it doesn't matter. When we see bad things happening, it's our duty as Jews and as partners with God to say, God, you're supposed to be the source of goodness in this world. You're not doing your job. Certainly, that's where we have to shake the heavens. Absolutely. And say, God, that's wrong. We have all the rights to do that. So again, it's a partnership. We're not slaves. Slaves can't speak up. And we're partners. And it is, I think, unique to Judaism. And God sometimes also waits for that. He waits for us to shout up. We shout out. It's connected. Passover is coming up. The story of the Grand Exodus is coming up. When does the tide begin to turn for the Jewish people? They were slaves for 210 years in Egypt. And then Moses comes and reveals himself, and he says, God has sent me to you after the burning bush, and I will redeem you. And he goes and speaks to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, what? These Jews are thinking to be liberated. I'm going to increase the labor. And from that point on, he asked the Jewish people, right, to create their own bricks. And the Jews couldn't take it anymore. And they started shouting and saying to Moses, well, you didn't come to redeem us. You made things even worse. And they shouted to God. And then finally it says, after that big shout, when things were already unbearable for the Jewish people, that's when Vatal Shavatam El Elohim, their cries went up to God. And that's when the tide started to turn. God is waiting sometimes. He's maybe saying, well, they're comfortable with their suffering. And we as Jews cannot accept status quo when it's negative, when it's bad. It's our duty to reject the status quo. That's why we've been difference makers in history in all sorts of realms. Because we don't accept the status quo, especially when it's filled with slavery and suffering. And when we shout, that's when God says, okay, now I'll change things. Fine. I was waiting for that shout. So in a way, not only can we, but sometimes we have to. It's not only an option, but it's almost compulsory. It's like Rabbi Steinsaltz himself says, if you think you've arrived, you're lost. So that means that you're good. That's already a very good sign. But secondly, I will say yes. I mean, I think everyone, that's why we need mentors. That's what we need, people who know us deeply, who we can share our deepest secrets with, and who can mold us and guide us, and can be that compass for us. But that's 2. 3, I think that, like you said, most people, God created us that way. Most people know that when they're doing something bad, if they're really honest with themselves and they don't try to rationalize it, then they know that it's bad. Most people have what you call the inner voice. and we have to be loyal to it. And we have to allow that voice to speak to us, to allow it to come in, that divine voice to come in. It's interesting. Speaking of Passover, just to connect things back to that holiday, the main difference between Passover and the rest of the year is on Passover, one is not allowed to have chametz. Chametz is that leavened bread, right? We get rid of any crumbs of any chametz. And what do we do instead? Instead of eating chametz, we eat matzah, right? Now the Kabbalists point out something beautiful, and that is that if you think about this, but the words chametz and matzah are almost identical. Chametz is spelled chet mem tzadik. It has a mem and tzadik, and matzah also has a mem and tzadik. Matzah mem tzadik hey. The only difference between chametz and matzah is chametz is spelled with a chet and the matzah is spelled with a hey. But even those letters are identical. Chet goes like this, and the hey also goes like this, but it just has a little opening, right? You know the shape of a hay? So what the Kabbalists say is that the difference between matzah and chametz, which is not welcomed on Passover, on the Festival of Freedom, is that chametz represents really arrogance. And arrogance seals a person, like the chet. Matzah represents humility. That's why it's flat. And it's also the key to freedom, to be humble. And what is humility? Humility is creating that openness, taking your chet and opening it up to create a hay, which is again the only difference between the word matzah and chametz. But when you have that opening for your inner voice, for that divine voice, for that compass, then you can also be free. Then you can not just be humble, but also be free and be redeemed. And in a way, I think that's point number 3, to allowing your chet to turn into a hay, create an opening within yourself. In ourselves, to listen to our deepest voice, to the voice of God. By the way, matzah, speaking of mitzvot, matzah also, the Kabbalists point out, matzah is the same word as mitzvah, just without the vav. But matzah and mitzvah is the same word, same letters in Hebrew. But in a way, because when we create that opening, then we become one with God, and we partner with God. And God is within us. And that's what mitzvah is about. Creating, again, that special partnership. All right. Unless there's any other comments, we can continue on. Okay, let's continue. Bottom of page 70 here, at least in this edition. Besides its concern. Does anyone want to read? Right. So I just want to focus on this a little bit. It's true. The Torah really relates to every part of our lives. To the point I know we spoke about this, but even tells you how to tie your shoelaces in the morning. It doesn't leave you alone even in that department. The way the Code of Jewish Law says that you should tie your shoelaces is you first put on your right shoe, then you put on your left shoe, then you tie your left shoe, and then you finish by tying your red shoe, so that you start with the right and you finish with the right. And if you don't have laces, then it's more problematic. But so even there, the Torah has something to say. It's unbelievable. But why? Because again, what's the Torah? The Torah is that tool that enables us to create this partnership that we were just speaking about, to make this very physical world into a very spiritual world. And therefore, it needs to enter even those domains, even the shoelace domain. And the more we allow it to enter our lives, the more we can really turn every aspect, every minute aspect of our lives into a spiritual experience. And that's really why. That's why, the word Torah has been interpreted, and he spoke about this at the very beginning of the chapter, into many different, in different ways. Torah comes from the word hora'ah or morah. Morah, right, means teacher. Means Torah comes to teach us. Another word for Torah is the word ora. It comes from the word light. And really, that's what Torah comes to do. It comes to illuminate even the darkest areas of our lives. The areas where we think, oh, no, that's shoelaces. There's no light there. That's physicality. No. But that's what the Torah comes to do. It illuminates even those parts. Light seeks to permeate everywhere. Yeah, technically speaking, the right way to do it, in general, not just with shoelaces, is that we want to, any experience we have, we want to start on the right side or with the right foot. So therefore, you start with the right foot and you end with the right foot. Because the right side in general, and this book speaks about this. And some of the new editions have the chart. Actually, I don't think this one has, but you have the Sfirot, right? The Kabbalistic characteristics, which are really this or placed into the form of a human body, right? So you have the intellectual attributes here. Chesed, kindness, is on the right side, and that's why we try to start with the right side. Yes. So left-handed people, their source of their right is left, right?
Okay.
So they have to start with the left. The right side is the side of kindness. Just to go back, so to go back to your point, technical, but it's beautiful because that's the point, right? Turn technicalities into spirituality. When you take off your shoes, you should also take off with the right and finish with the right. So that every action, take off your right shoe first. Untie your right shoe first, then go to your left, untie your left, take it off completely, then go back and take off your right. And by the way, there's a lot of things like that. But that's so beautiful, and that's exactly what he's saying here, that God permeates every area of life. I don't know if you know, but when you enter your homes, when you go home today and you enter your home, you should try to enter your home with your right foot, no matter what. Again, because you bring God's kindness to your home. When you enter a holy place, you should enter with the right foot. I'm always cognizant. I was just in Israel, like I said. When I get off the plane in Tel Aviv or in Ben Gurion, which is Lod, really, I get off the plane with the right foot. Again, to show that kindness and that love towards Israel. When I leave Israel, I go on the plane with my left foot because I don't want to leave Israel. Look, you can do what you can do. That's fine. God doesn't want you also to do more than doesn't want you to eat more than you can chew, as they say. That's a step by step, and it's an infinite road also. I'm also again, if you think you've arrived, that's when you lost, right? Because really you're supposed to constantly be growing, so that's fine. If today you can't do one thing, so you'll do it tomorrow, you'll do it the next day. That's the journey we're on, where every one of us is on. It's the Rabbi Steinsaltz has another book called Teshuvah, which is a great book too, about reconnecting and returning, really. And one of the chapters is I'm just remembering it in Hebrew, but it's like this: all or nothing, a false illusion. All or nothing is a false illusion. In other words, Judaism is not an all or nothing religion. We have to do what we can do. My father himself, reconnected to Judaism at the age of 14, 15, but there was a time, and he came from a very loosely traditional family. But he tells me there was a time in his life and that was completely fine. There was a time in his life in which he was eating cheeseburgers and even ham and things like that. Yet he was keeping Shabbat.
Oh my God!
And that's perfectly fine again, because it's that pathway that he was on, and eventually he gave up the ham and so on. But that's the way we have to view our lives too. It's not an all or nothing religion, and sometimes we can do one and we can't do the second thing. That's just fine. God doesn't. It's almost like anything else in life, right? God doesn't expect us to be Usain Bolts in one shot. And some people will never be Usain Bolts, even if they try their hardest. It takes time. The famous dream maybe the most prominent dream in the Torah is the dream of Jacob, right? Where he's on his way to his uncle. He's escaping the wrath of his brother Esau, who wants to kill him. And he falls asleep in Bethel, and he dreams of the ladder, right? With angels going up and down. Going down from the heavens and going back up to the heavens. And the question that is asked, which you can think, there's a concept like that in Yiddish called a klotz kashya, which means a question from maybe an idiotic question. But the question that is asked is, 1 second, if Jacob saw angels going up and down, why did the angels need a ladder? Don't they have wings? Can't they just fly? Fly to the heavens? Why the need for a ladder? And the answer is brilliant. The answer is that, to reach the heavens, you can only do so step by step. Even if you have wings. Even if you think you're an angel, you can only reach the heavens step by step. Flying in one shot, it just won't last. I think that's the idea, right? It's a step by step. But again, because Torah permeates every area of our lives, so there's so much to add. And we just have to be honest with ourselves of how much we can chew and how much we can take upon ourselves in that ever-growing journey. Yeah, but that's That's the idea. So the Torah is this light that comes really to illuminate every area. But I agree, Barry. I think that the genius of it is that it makes you God conscious all the time. And in a way, I think it fulfills the purpose that God has infused in us, and it begs us from the get-go not to forget, and that is that we are in this world, but we are not of this world. We live here in a very worldly world, but we're not from here. We're way above this. And by thinking of God the whole time, it enables us, yes, I have a house, I have a foot, I have the ability to walk, but that's not me. Me is that thought, that divine consciousness. That's me. And that's what it does. That really is what it achieves. Okay, just maybe a few more sentences here. Since the Torah is the blueprint of the world, does anyone want to continue? Which, by the way, one should lie down on the left side. When you go to sleep, you should fall asleep on your left side and not on your right side. Maimonides speaks about that, and by the way, medicine is consistent with that, I think. That's because your digestive system would work better if you lie down. Right, Barry? You tell me? If you lie down on your left side rather than on your right side. And now we should fall asleep on your left side and somehow wake up on your right side. That's what Maimonides says. So it even goes there. But again, the idea is, by the way, this shares another idea that we didn't speak about, and that is that to experience godliness, don't think that you can only experience it here in synagogue or by getting an aliyah, but by doing a mitzvah, even what's considered mitzvah. You can be experiencing God by tying your shoelaces, by falling asleep on your left side, just as much. And that's really what this is saying. And by allowing God to come in to even those mundane realms of life, really we are connecting this kiss, this divine presence, that no other world and no other existence, no angel, no spirit can ever experience. It's something that's deeply holy, deeply magical. I'll say this, that just as a concluding thought, I think that the righteous, and I think of Rabbi Steinsaltz when I speak of the righteous, but Rabbi Steinsaltz, one of his fortes is that really he's obsessed. He's a walking encyclopedia. Really, he knows anything about everything about anything from zoology to biology to whatever. But one of his incredible strengths is that he's able to find holiness even in chemistry, even in zebras. And one of my great memories of life is I remember that he was once invited by a big science convention for scientists. There were Nobel Prize winners there and so on, and he was invited to speak. And it was in San Diego, and I used to go and see him whenever he came to America, wherever he was. I would join him. And then we had a break, and he said to me, look, I have 4 hours until my next lecture. And then he says to me like this, let's go find God in the San Diego Zoo. And we went to the zoo, and he wanted to see the panda. He had never seen a panda before. There's a panda in the San Diego Zoo. And he was mesmerized by the animals, and he found God in the San Diego Zoo. Because God can be found even in a panda, even the condor. And I remember him staring at the condor. He found God, and he found lessons of each animal, divine lessons in each and every one of them. Look, I will tell you this. I mean, it's very tough. For me, particularly, it's very tough because this is experiencing a whole different side of Rabbi Steinsaltz that I am forced to experience, But in a way, generally speaking, I think, and it's true for anyone who experiences a loved one who goes through a stroke or any medical setback like that, is that you learn to develop a different language. Because right now, my language, Rabbi Steinsaltz, is a language of words, a language of actions maybe also. But now it's just a language of being, which is in a way more profound than words. Just watching him and watching him deal with his own suffering without him having to communicate how he deals with it or communicate anything else. That in and of itself, I think, is a massive lesson. And to see the grace and even the acceptance that he has and the uninterrupted faith that he has in God, even though he's suffering so much, is to me, is a lesson that speaks volumes. Okay, so April 17th. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Okay,